Welcome to the channel. My name is Rob and I have Gareth, the rugby referee, with me, and we're going to discuss something that happened on Tuesday the 27th of December 2022 concerning Joe Marler. He is not my favourite character in rugby, so we're going to discuss an incident that happened with Harlequins versus Bristol. Gareth, this wasn't something that was necessarily picked up on TV. Could you inform everyone what happened?
Yeah, during the game, Harlequins against Bristol, as you just said, in the first half, a melee, a scuffle broke out between Harlequins and Bristol. Now, Joe Marler actually wasn't involved in the scuffle, but he started it. And what he started was
Sorry,
when
I've got to stop you. Isn't that
All right.
normally the way with Joe Marler? He starts it and then sort of edges out and leaves the rest of the situation to, erupt.
Sometimes he can.
Sorry, you may carry on.
It
You may carry on.
can be it can be an incendiary, but in this case, what he said is he's referred to another player's mother as a prostitute, and that obviously in any given situation is completely unacceptable. The other players took offence to it, as I would expect anyone to, and from that, the incident happened. Now, the referee, Carl Dixon, didn't hear it. None of his touch judges heard it. Now they did the TMO. However, after the game, Joe Marler was cited by Bristol. They've put a complaint into the RFU. The RFU have then got hold of the audio recording, and it has picked it up. He hasn't just said it once; he's actually said it 3 times. Now that is completely unacceptable. There's no defending that at all. Unfortunately, Joe, he's one of them. He's a fantastic rugby player. He's just a total idiot as a person every now and again. That he inserts idiot, removes brain cell.
So
I could say typical front rower, but in Joe's case, he has this habit of taking it too far.
So we're gonna discuss Joe Marler. I've discussed him before in previous videos, and it's not necessarily a character I am a fan of. For this sort of reason. Now, he's obviously gonna make comments about someone else and his mum in this sense, and it's totally unacceptable. But he keeps doing it. And what I don't like is he'd done this TV show of mental health problems and everything, and how he gets over it and how he suffered. But he has no care for anyone else except himself. He is a character. I've said this before. In my opinion, he is simply a school bully. And I'm not doubting that he's a good rugby player.
Yeah, but I slightly disagree with that. I don't think he's necessarily a school bully. I think he's just one of them characters in life who has no filter. I don't think he's the school bully. He's one of them. He will say something, and then 10 seconds later engage brain. I must admit, I'm guilty of having done it myself in the past. Something comes out, you just say the first word that comes into your mouth.
I think you're being too easy on him.
About 5 minutes later, you go, I really shouldn't have said that. Hands up. I'm sorry. I think he's just one of them. He's one of them type of person who doesn't engage brain before speaking. He did it, I think I remember rightly, about 5 or 6 years ago. Might have been a bit longer, actually, when he called Samson Lee Gypsy Boy, the Welsh prop, in an England-Wales game. He called him a Gypsy Boy because Samson's from a travelling family. Now, Samson himself didn't actually take offence at the time. He just levelled Joe Marler in a scrum later. But it was picked up and Joe got a ban from it. He's one of them, like I've said before, great rugby player, just an idiot. And unfortunately, he's one of them who needs managing and needs a bit of, I won't say TLC, but
I just think you are being far too kind on him. I think... sorry, I speak before I think. But I don't... Things that come out of his mouth do not come out of my mouth. And I get in trouble for a lot less. And what I don't like is the fact that he will constantly say these things to players and say sorry afterwards. and assuming that's going to make everything okay when he'll just go and do the same thing 5 minutes later. It's that whole saying sorry is sort of the effect has worn off now, in my opinion anyway.
In a way, what's happened this time is quite clever what the RFU disciplinary committee have done. They've given him a ban of 6 weeks. He's got to serve 2, 4 have been suspended. Now, this means if he's caught again this year, not only will he get a ban, but he'll then get the additional 4 weeks added on top. And this time, there won't be any mitigation because it'll be, you've had a shot across your bows. You know, look, Joe, you really do now need to start acting your age. You know, you're 32. You know, you're a player in the, well, he's on the fringe of it. I think he's back in the England squad now under Steve Borthwick because Eddie Jones had got rid of him. Probably because of some of his disciplinary issues. Probably because they don't like each other.
It's a tricky one, though, isn't it? Because it's a tricky one because there's no doubting he's a good player.
Oh yeah,
but
there's no doubt.
You've got to have your actions speak louder than your words, and he is let down by the things he says. You know, because he's not a professional player. He doesn't have that professional attitude and behaviour that goes along with being a role model. Because that's what you've got to remember. You know, if you're a professional sportsman, you're a role model.
I think the biggest problem with like I say, with Joe is he's one of them. He's a bit of a character. He's actually quite. I've met Joe Marler twice, and he is actually a very nice bloke, and he is very funny. But I think he takes it too far on too many occasions, and that's what's let him down this time. And on other occasions in the past, like particularly, he seems to have a thing when we play Wales.
It's the class clown, simple.
You know, I think, he's quite right. They got a ban this time and quite a stiff fine off Harlequins, I believe, as well. You know, I think it maybe is time he goes away and has a little word with himself. But in terms of, do I think he's a school bully? No, I just think he's a bloke who doesn't think before he acts. That's where I think we disagree.
There's, you know, when you're, let's put it this way, you know, when you're at school, the class clown is hilarious. All right, everyone enjoys the class clown, winding up the teachers and things like that. But when you grow up and you become an adult, it's not quite the same. But it's just as if he hasn't changed. He hasn't grown up. And as I said, if you're his mate and you're his friend, you're great. You know, it's great. He's funny. But if you're on the other side of that, it's he's got to start acting like an adult.
I think in a way, I've got to agree with that. Yeah, it is time to, you know, at 32, it is time to start acting your age and not your shoe size. And as like you say, as a member of the England squad, you've got to be at the top of your game in all respects, both on and off the pitch. But what I don't, in a way, I think in the past, because he's got away with some of the things he's said, in that it's regarded as what you call my banter.
Yeah.
It's then escalated. And now we've got to this point where he's called another player's mother, which I am actually surprised he's still got a head on his shoulders, because I think any self-respect, if he insulted their mother, they probably would have took his head off his shoulders. But I think it's one of them where maybe he needs some counselling from someone not rugby related.
Do you think Joe Marler's been let off incidents previously? He's been allowed to get away with previous incidents without severe punishment that actually he doesn't realise. I don't know if this is the right words, but maybe he doesn't realise that what he's doing is wrong because he hasn't been punished for previous incidents.
Yeah, I've got to agree to a point there. You know, it's one of them. In the past, he's had bans for. I mean, the one that sticks into mind is when he tweaked Alan Wynne-Jones' testicles. He got 10 weeks for that. Would have got 20, but they halved it because he pleaded guilty. What is very telling in this case, though, is the wording that came from the chair of the disciplinary hearing. He was utterly straight to the point, and he said, the code of conduct, the values of rugby union are not optional. When you play rugby, you sign up to them values of respect. And in a way, he's also touching on something we've seen recently in rising in rugby when we go back to like Rassie Erasmus. That's lack of respect to other players and officials as well. He was very scathing in that, I think he basically said to Joe Marler, look, you remember the England squad, you're a senior player, you've been around long enough, wind it in. The game does need characters because we don't want rugby to become sterile. It would just become boring.
Of course.
And at times he is funny, and you think, yeah, he's quite hilarious. There's other times, like you say, but when you've seen things that he's said and done, and you say, no, not funny. And that's the trouble, is differentiating between where that line is. And I think Joe Marler on many occasions, has crossed it. I think he just needs
an interesting point.
To be really, but in going back to the original point, where I think the future for Joe Marler is go away, have a look at yourself, and think, yeah, there's times I can be funny, and because he does come out with some one-liners every now and again, which are absolutely hilarious.
No doubt.
But on this occasion, and what annoyed me was on social media, people saying, "Oh, it's just a bit of banter." I said, if I called your mother that, you probably want to take my head clean off my shoulders.
Yeah,
it is unacceptable, completely unacceptable. And anyone that's defending what he said needs to go away and have a word with themselves. But, it's one of them. I think it has to be a turning point for him. That's one thing I do think.
But bearing in mind, at his age, 32, he hasn't got long left in his career. So it's what legacy do you want to have behind your name? I have looked at a lot of rugby players, and who are incredible players, professional attitudes. But will Joe Marler at the end of his career have the same reputation as these other players? And I don't think so. He will not have. I don't think he's a player that will be remembered, if I'm honest.
I think he's very much a Marmite kind of guy. You either love him or you hate him. And I think it is one of his sole jobs is, and I think Harlequins have been a bit guilty of this over the years, they've employed him solely to wind up the other front row, because he's
maybe.
He antagonises them. One, because he's very good at scrumming. But, his actual ability to scrum is second to none. But also his ability to wind up other players is also second to none. But there's doing it subtly, and then there's calling someone's mother a prostitute, which is just completely unacceptable. You can't, in this day and age, or even ever, refer to them. I remember at school, so you call someone's mum that, you should be probably in detention at break time, because you're probably going to a fight with the other guy. It's never been acceptable. But like I said, on this occasion, it's one of the ones where he has crossed the line big time.
It's an interesting point you made about them signing up to the values of rugby when they become a professional, which we've discussed the differences between football and rugby, and it's not got the same. You haven't got the same level in football where you behave yourself, basically. But are we seeing possibly rugby slipping? Are we seeing rugby losing its... So as I said, the saying is, football is a gentleman's... No, is a gentleman's game played by thugs, and rugby is a thug's game played by gentlemen.
Yeah.
But is that going now?
Unfortunately, I hate to say it, but rugby is going down that slippery slope. And I've seen it more and more, probably since COVID, that basic respect for referees, for other players, for coaches, has just gone by the wayside. I don't know what COVID did. I don't know whether it was... In fact, to be honest, I think it was there before COVID, but it's got worse since. And it's making me, it's making other referees, it's making people who've been involved in rugby a long while think, why am I bothering?
Yeah. Which, hearing from an insider like yourself has said, us football people, we see rugby as as a football referee, we think, oh, and this was one of my first videos looking at Nigel Owens, all the respect this guy gets from these big burly blokes compared to us football referees that get constant abuse. But if that's changing, and not necessarily to the same extent as what we get in football,
it's not
but
good as
that's
bad as
not a good thing. If rugby referees, for example, are suffering this similar-ish to football referees.
Yeah, it's not quite got as bad. I mean, I don't know if you heard before Christmas up my way, a referee was actually punched out by a player and suffered quite serious injuries.
Yeah, that's just not the sort of thing you expect when you think of rugby. In football, because if you think, on the radio, on the talk shows and stuff, they've spoken about football referees being abused and assaulted, which has happened to me. But you never get the discussion of rugby referees getting abused because it's just not something that is known about, I don't think, and because rugby has that aura about it.
Yeah, thankfully it's not as bad. Where it's worse is in the age group rugby, because you'll get, and the worst offenders by far are parents, because as far as they're concerned, their son is going to go and play for England. And as I said when we had our very, very first video all the while back, along comes this man with a whistle, and all of a sudden he's saying, "Oh no, you can't do that. You can't do that. You can't do that." And because unfortunately some parents have blown smoke up the kid's backside all their life, pardon my French there, they think they're wonderful. They've never had a proper referee. They suddenly get a referee, and the ref says, "No, you can't do that." And they've probably not been told no half their life. They then suddenly take it out on the referee. And parents can be just as bad, and it's one of the reasons why I've packed in doing 8th grade rugby on a Sunday. One, I want my Sundays back because I'm now the wrong side of 40 and I haven't got long left refereeing. But also, I just got fed up with it. I got fed up with parents screaming at me for 70 minutes.
So if we can link this, why am I bothering? If we can link this back to, for example, the Joe Marler incident and previous incidents he's had, if young children are watching this and parents are watching this, and these incidents aren't properly cracked down on, then just like in football, they think it's acceptable. So that is a big issue that we've got with players like Joe Marler, which are letting the sport down. They're letting rugby down because, by their actions, their actions are going to change the future of the sport, and not for a good way.
No, I do have to agree with that. It's one, like I say. I mean, I don't want to lose people like Joe Marler because, like I say, you take this issue in isolation, 95% of the time, he is a good player and he's quite funny. It's that 5% when he engages stupid mode and you think, oh, for God's sake, Joe, shut up. When he and like I say, he can get under people's skin because he'll just a little word in the ear. He might just say something like, he might just comment on something, and he knows where the line is, but it's when he goes over that line and you think, come on, mate, knock it on the head now. You're going a bit too far. You might say he's 32, nearly 33, and as you quite rightly say, time left at the top. He's probably got 4 or 5 years left at the top. Probably not long left with England. That said, Dan Cole's just come back into England squad at 35. I think it is time he has to go away and do a bit of growing up. That is the top and bottom of it. But I do think 95% of the time he's a cracking player who can be quite funny. He just needs to learn where the line is, and definitely don't go calling another player's mother a prostitute, because that's just not funny in any shape or form.
You guys watching, what do you think? Let me know your thoughts on Joe Marler. Let me know about your thoughts on this recent incident, on what he said to another player. Do you think rugby is going down the slippery slope? Let us know in the comments. Make sure you hit the like button and subscribe for more content like this. Thank you, Gareth. It's brilliant to have your insight into this. You know a hell of a lot more than me. I'm given the background of football. You are given the background of rugby. It's a pleasure once again. Guys, join in with the discussion down below, and I'll catch you next time.